Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So this video is actually going to be a 2-in-1. I'm going to be doing a full tutorial on this Valentine's Day very pink look, but I will be doing a full review of the entire Morphe and Jeffree Star brush collection. I have the sponges as well, and I used absolutely everything to create this entire look right here. I only did have to grab for one additional brush, and I will get into that later in the video. So if you're interested in seeing this tutorial right here and a full review on the entire Morphe and Jeffree Star collection, make sure to keep on watching, and please don't forget to subscribe because I do upload 3 times a week, and that is the best way to stay up to date on all the fun stuff I'm posting. So if you're interested in seeing how these brushes perform, keep on watching. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to jump into is the sponges for foundation. Now it comes with 3. It comes with 2 of the little sponges and 1 of the big ones. Just for reference, this is the unwet baby sponge versus the wet baby sponge. And then this is an undampened regular Morphe sponge versus the dampened. This will end up being this size when you soak it, so it does grow quite a bit. And the sponge set retails for $16. I'm also going to prep the brushes. The brush kit, you can buy them individually for a whole lot more, but the carrying case plus all 7 brushes, one of which is double-sided, retails for $49. I'm going to be using all of these for the look today. So the skin is already primed, and I'm going to take the Mercier Flawless Lumiere foundation that I've really been enjoying, and I'm going to take that on the Jeffree Star Morphe sponge. With these sponges, normally you guys will see me pat like this. With these, I actually prefer to use the flat side because I find I do get a little bit of better coverage. So I'm going to take a few pumps right on here and just start patting that in. Now, I have used the red sponge before, and I feel like this is the exact same thing, just a different color. I don't think they played around with the texture or the actual design of the sponge. I think it's just the exact same thing in pink, which, given the price of the original versus the price of the trio, I actually think that it is a great value. I love the flat side, and it's a little denser than a beauty blender. I do love how soft a beauty blender is, just for really like packing into the skin. But this one does the job really well, and if you can't drop $20 on a single sponge, $16 for a trio is not bad. I'm going to grab the baby sponge for the concealer. And I've been playing around with the Makeup Revolution Fast-Based Concealer quite a bit lately. Now normally I don't love these baby sponges, but this one is actually doing the trick. Yeah, if you liked using like baby sponges for cream contour, cream highlight, I think you're gonna like this. I personally do not. I prefer just using the larger sponge, so that's what I'm going to do. Now normally I would take the tip of my sponge to set down my under eye powder, so that is what I'm going to do today. Then I'm going to jump into the JS2, which is the fluffy powder brush. And I'm going to take that just to set down the rest of the face. Now this brush is super soft. It is not at all scratchy. It is really depositing the powder very nicely. It's not getting gross. It's not moving around my foundation. It's genuinely just sweeping powder on really, really gently. So I'm going to probably use this for bronzer as well. I think that's going to be like a nice shape for it. So I'm going to just bake the face a little bit, and I'll be right back. So while that is baking, I'm going to grab the number 3 brush, which is listed as a contour brush, but since it's synthetic, I'm actually going to try it with creams. I'm going to take my Painterly Paint Pot from MAC, and I'm going to use this to apply my cream shadow base. And I actually think that's depositing the color very nicely, very evenly. It's not tugging, it's not grabbing. A lot of times with certain synthetic fibers, it won't deposit an even coat. Things will get patchy, but I'm getting pretty much a very smooth, even base with this. And I'm going to go back into that first brush, and I'm just going to set down those lids. I can probably tell you right now, just based on like what I'm looking at, you will see this brush a lot. This is a shape that I'm already a fan of. It's just a little bit like tighter, which I think is gonna be good for really being nice and precise. So because I want a little extra coverage, I'm gonna go into the JS number 1 brush, which is going to be a size queen brush, which is just all about surface area for powders. So I'm gonna dip into some Studio Fix powder, and I'm just gonna take this to lightly kind of dust away any of that translucent powder. I do like to do this on, like if it's a date night, or in this case, Valentine's Day, I wanna make sure that everything is gonna stay in place all day long. And by doubling up on my powders, I'm really gonna make sure that we're looking good. That is also really soft. All of these synthetic fibers tend to be like the exact same thing, which is good because that means they're all going to be just as soft. I am gonna use this same brush with a little bit of the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finishing Powder because this just has a little more luminosity than the Studio Fix. So I just wanna put this kind of where I do want a little bit of shine. I'm avoiding the nose and the forehead, but I am gonna make sure that we have a little more of that like natural luminosity to the cheeks and the rest of the face. So for bronzer, I'm gonna grab a little bit of my Marc Jacobs Tan-Tastic bronzer, and I'm actually going to take that on that number 2 brush, and we're just gonna add some bronzer. So this is definitely applying the powder nicely. It's not getting muddy, it's not going anywhere I don't want it to. It's blending out really nicely. I mean, I know the product is great, so that's also a bonus. I don't know how this would perform with something like not great, because sometimes, you know, it could be the brush or the product. In this case, I do know how this product works, but there have been brushes that it does not work with. This, however, is not one of them. So this is gonna be a really nice brush. Then I'm gonna dip into the Size Queen brush again, and this time I'm gonna take it into the contour shade in the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Unlocked palette. And I'm just going to gently chisel up the cheekbone, just to kind of raise that a little bit and blend it under the bronzer. Then I'm gonna take a little bit of the bronzer and contour mixed together, and I'm just going to softly blend. And this brush is doing magic. So I did dry off this brush, and I'm gonna take a little more of that contour shade, and I'm just gonna take this to Snatch the Nose, and I'm gonna take a tiny bit of the brightening shade and just use that anywhere we want a little extra brightness. So I'm really liking how all of these brushes are performing so far. I'm going to take that same Size Queen brush. This is what I'm gonna actually use for blush today, and I'm gonna mix both of these shades. And we're just gonna add a little bit of rosiness to the cheeks because I'm gonna be going very, very like pinky purple on the eyes. I'm really gonna go pretty soft on the blush today because I don't want it to be too overpowering, but we definitely do want it to be present. And once we've applied that, I'm gonna go back into the Size Queen brush and just blend everything in. Next up, I'm gonna go into the JS4, and this is gonna be the highlighting brush, the Fly High brush, if you will. This is very similar to, you know, all of Morphe's very similarly shaped brushes, so I'm positive it's gonna perform just the same. I'm just gonna dip into that Hourglass highlighting shade from the palette. And no surprise, that performs just as beautifully as pretty much every Morphe highlighting brush does. Now the key to these brushes, the like fluffy but dense highlighting brushes, the more you use them, the more you wash them, the better they get. So this is nice. I definitely think that I still need to like break it in a little bit more before it really deposits product like my other ones do, but all of them started this way, and the more you use them, the better they get. Now I'm going to take a little bit of my Milk Makeup Kush Brow and just run that through my brows. I don't tend to do a lot with my brows, as you know, but I do really love taking this product in and then using a spoolie just to comb it out. So fortunately, this brush set, the only brush out of the 7 that I don't think I'm going to get a lot of use out of is the double-sided, this could be either liner or brow with a spoolie. Now it is a nice quality spoolie, so I think it's going to be at least like, I mean, it's a spoolie. I have about 1,000 spoolies, but it works. It's a nice size, but of the 7 brushes, this is the one I saw and I'm like, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna use it, but clearly it works. So this does come with 2 eyeshadow brushes, the number 5 and the number 6. The 5 is your typical crease brush, and then you have a fluffy blender brush that's a little flatter for like packing. It would not be a Valentine's Day tutorial from me if I wasn't using the Jeffree Star Blood Sugar palette anyway, so I am going to be using the brushes with this palette today. So I'm gonna dip into Cavity, the hot pink shade right here, because if you wanna see how a brush performs, you really wanna make sure you're using some shadows you could see. And I'm going to start just in and above the crease and blend that out. So the color is depositing nicely. It is also blending nicely. This is definitely not the first brush I like to go in with. If I'm going to use any real eyeshadow brushes, I tend to go in with something a little bit fluffier to start, because I feel like I can really just blow it out and diffuse the product. This is gonna take a little bit longer, but as far as a brush I can use to build up like an inner outer third, like really precise crease blending, I think it's great. But since I do have larger eyes and a really like hooded lid, I do find that for me personally, things do start to look a little bit better if I'm really blowing out the crease and going with something like this. Next up, I'm gonna go into Intravenous up here, which is a brownie purple, and I'm gonna take that on the number 6 brush, and I'm going to just gently define the outer portion of the eye. Now, same story with the highlighting brush, and really you can say that for any of the white hair brushes. The more you use them, the more you wash them, the softer they get. I feel like the better job they do. This is definitely working, but just based on my knowledge of Morphe brushes and the brushes I've used in the past, I do tend to get a much better result when I'm using like something I've really used for a while. So I'm gonna take a little bit of Tongue Pop, the neutral pink, and I'm just gonna use that to blend out the crease a little bit, just to make things look a little bit softer. And then I'm gonna build up Intravenous a little bit more. I'm gonna take a little bit more of Intravenous and I'm going to run that very closely to the waterline, just on the outer third of the eye, just to kind of tie this around. Normally I don't love brushes this shape to do that, but because this has a very pointed tip, it's actually performing very nicely. And then I'm going to dip into the fluffy brush and a little bit more of Cavity, the hot pink, and I'm just going to blend that out. I'm going to take a tiny bit more of Intravenous and just re-deepen and define the outer portion of the lower lash line. And I'm actually going to build up the darkness on the upper lid as well. Now, there is no real packing brush in this collection, so I am going to take that same fluffy brush, and I'm going to take Candy Floss, the pink shimmer shade, and I'm going to load that up on the brush. I am also going to spray it with a tiny bit of setting spray, and we're going to apply that to the lid. I'm then going to take a tiny bit more of Intravenous and just blend that into the lid shade. And I'm going to take a touch more of Cavity, the pink, and just re-intensify the crease. Alright, last thing I'm going to do before I tie up the lid is I'm going to take Glucose, the matte white, and I'm just going to blend that above the pink, just to kind of clean up the line, and that's also going to serve as a matte brow bone highlight. And because my options are limited on other brushes, because I did want to just use this collection, I'm actually going to grab the angled brush, and I'm going to dip back into the... Actually, I'm going to use a different highlighter. I'm going to grab Crystal Ball from like 2 years ago summer collection, and I'm going to take this angled brow brush, and I'm going to use that to highlight the inner corner. Okay, I'm switching to my other brush because that's not really working for me. Much better. All right, I'm gonna go and do my lips and my mascara and lashes, and I'll be right back to summarize my thoughts. And that is the finished look. So, just to run over some of my thoughts. First, on the sponges, I don't love the little one just because I don't think I'm gonna get a lot of use out of it. I don't typically love little sponges like this. The big one I do really like. I think that it is a little bit denser than a beauty blender, so you're gonna get a little bit better coverage with something like this. The one thing I have noticed about Morphe sponges in the past is they tend to rip a little bit easier than the beauty blenders do. So whereas you'll get like 3 months out of a beauty blender, you may only get a month and a half out of this. But this retails for like $8 on its own, so you'll definitely get your money's worth out of the sponges. Now for the brushes, I am gonna go in order. First, the #1 Size Queen brush. I did not try it for foundation. I did use it for a bunch of powders because that's typically what I would use a brush like this for. I loved it. I think it packed things on very nicely. It reminds me a lot of the flat-topped brush that I typically use. It just happens to be a little bit smaller, which I think precision is not necessarily a bad thing. I do love the way all of the brushes fit in the hand and the way that the handle just kind of lends to use and blendability. The #2, this is probably my favorite brush out of the entire set. I will use something like this for bronzer, blush, setting powder, highlight, everything. Like, this is just a shape that I find is essential for everybody. It's something I really enjoy and will continue to use. The #3, it did a great job with what I used it for. This is not typically a brush shape I normally would gravitate towards, so if you were just looking to pick out of the collection, this would be one of the few I would probably skip on, but for the bundle price, you might as well get them all, because why not? But definitely a good brush for the nose contour and any cream-like contour application on the lid, or if you wanted to really like chisel out your features, this would be a good brush for it, but that's not really something I do. With the highlighting brush, like I said, the more you use this, the better it's going to be. Like, I'm gonna use, just to show you, and I'm gonna dip into a highlighter that I know is blinding. This is from the Anastasia Nicole Guerrero Glow Kit. You see how this just beautifully layers up? It looks stunning, it looks blinding. This is good. However, the more you use this brush, the more fanned the bristles become. It just gives you a better glow the more you use it. So I will love this more and more after I use it about 100 times, but it's good just like, and I feel this way anytime I use any of this shaped brush from Morphe. If I go into, you know, this one, it took me, you see how tight these bristles still are? Once it really fans out and they get a little fluffier, it gets better. The crease brush, definitely good for blending and really just getting into the socket of the eye. I definitely wish it was a little bit bigger just because for my eye shape, again, I do like going in with more of this shaped brush where I can really just stick it in and really just buff out those lines very seamlessly. This is a whole lot smaller and a whole lot tighter. That's what she said, but if I had to like, it works for a brush. I have a lot like this that I do use for blending, but definitely like, I would want to add another brush that was a little bit bigger. The packing brush for the crease, I actually think this worked really well. I really liked the way it really just precisely blended out the lower lash line. Definitely a fan of this and will continue to use it. Spoolie is a spoolie. I think, again, it worked. It really just kind of fluffed everything where it needed to go. It worked like a spoolie did. It is, so the spoolie that I tend to use, this one is a tiny bit bigger than, it's a little bit wider, so I do think that I like the shape a little bit more than the one I've currently been using. I will get 0 use out of the liner and brow side. I don't do brow pomades, I don't like to do gel liners, but you can always use a good spoolie. So all in all, I will say that this is definitely worth the price. I think the entire brush kit and sponge collection is good. If you had to like really focus it down and you were going to only pick the best of the best from the collection, for me, it would be the 2 large powder brushes, the crease brush, and the highlighting brush. Like if I had to pick nothing else, these 4 products above and beyond are probably gonna be the 4 that I will continue to use all the time. You'll see everything else kind of mixed in here and there, but if it's like the ones that game changer, it's these 4 brushes. The sponges were good, but honestly not so revolutionary that I'm gonna never use a beauty blender again. The other brushes were good, but I haven't put them up against like some of my all-time favorite brushes, so I'm gonna have to play around with them a little bit more to see, but obviously They did the job. I'm really happy with how the look turned out. So success for me. Thanks again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.